Get ready to get shticky. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shticky Situations. I'm Rachel, and I'm going to be your host. Normally, I'm going to have guests on, but I thought for my first episode, I'll just give you an intro on who I am, why I'm doing this podcast, what the heck you're even listening to, and why you're listening. So, I guess we'll start with who I am. My name's Rachel. I am 28 years old. I'm a modern Orthodox, nice Jewish girl living in New York City, and I'm here to tell you about all of my crazy adventures. So, I guess a little bit more background about me and why I wanted to do this podcast. I used to do a podcast, and it was one of the most fun things I've ever done. It was just it's like my calling. I mean, really, reality TV is my calling, but we'll get to that later. But podcasting is like a second nature to me. And since the old podcast ended, which honestly, there's some tea there, but like, we'll wait and see if I'll spill it or not. So I guess you have to stay tuned for that. Ever since my old podcast ended, I've been trying to think of ideas to do a new podcast. I just think that for me, the world needs to hear what I have to say. So here I am. I also, you should know, think that I'm hilarious, which it's been corroborated by multiple sources that I am hilarious. So I guess you'll have to make your own judgments on that, but got to keep tuning in. I saw a TikTok actually, which I spend a lot of my life on TikTok these days, but I saw a TikTok recently, and there's the line in a Taylor Swift song. It's kind of strange that you think I'm funny because he never did. And this girl on the TikTok is like, LOL, never going to relate to this line of this song. And I'm like, yeah, same girl, same. Like, no matter what, even if I go on dates and guys are like, whoa, she has a terrible personality. Which, let me rephrase that. I would never be told that I have a terrible personality because I have a great personality. It just might not be their taste. So maybe it's too much of a personality, but I'm never boring. I'm never going to be a boring date. I'm never going to be a boring conversation. Sometimes, I guess, if you get me talking about work, I have your typical average Jewish corporate job that can be construed as boring and is very boring, actually, which is why this podcast and also reality television is my true calling in life. But that's okay. I'll keep my day job for now. So I thought, what a better topic to talk about than dating. In my old podcast, we had some dating episodes, and those were always the most popular, and that's the most tea to spill. And like, what you'll learn about me is I love spilling the tea, which is why I'm doing this podcast. Dating tea happens to be the best kind of tea, at least I found. And talking to all of my single friends, and even my married friends, like who dated, not the ones who like married the first guy they dated, but do I even have any of those friends? Who knows? All of my friends also have crazy stories. So I thought, what better way to tell the world our crazy stories than this podcast? So throughout all the episodes, I'm going to have various friends on, various acquaintances, anyone who reaches out to me who wants to come on the podcast, come on and spill their tea. So that is going to be my first plug. If you would like to be a guest on my podcast, hit me up at shtykysituationspod@gmail.com. You can email me or slide into the Insta DMs, Shticky Situations Pod on Instagram. And I'd love to have you on as a guest. Always looking for good guests with good stories. And don't worry. You might think that, oh, she's advertising that she already needs guests on her first episode. Don't worry, everybody. I have a whole lineup of really great guests with really great stories. So not to worry. But like, we're always open for more people. Always open for more stories. We're very inclusive here. I want to hear everyone's tea. No tea is too hot to spill. Just remember that. Okay, so I guess I'll tell you a little bit more about me and my background and what qualifies me to tell all these stories. So this past year, my whole life kind of blew up. This has been like one of the craziest years of my whole life. About a year ago, I decided I needed to move to a new area, meet new people. My life was like, with COVID and everything, my social life was kind of diminishing by the second, and I'm like, no, I need more. I need something else. Everyone who lived in my old neighborhood moved out. I'm like, there's nobody even left to meet. So I'm like, okay. And also, like, to be really honest with you guys, all my friends got married, and I'm like, okay, I need a whole new group of friends. Like, I just need people to socialize with. Forget anything else, like, people who aren't just, like, hanging with their husbands. So I decided that I needed to move to a new area. I made all the plans, and I moved, and that started one of the craziest adventures of my life. One of the craziest years of my life. There were a lot of ups, a lot of downs, maybe more downs, who knows. This isn't a depressing podcast, though, don't worry. So it started with a whole lot. It's like if one thing's good, another is bad, and when that thing becomes good, then the other stuff becomes bad. I don't know. So throughout this year, people who I thought were my close friends became strangers, and people who were strangers became my close friends. I had a full-blown relationship. Yeah, there was that, and a full-blown breakup. That sucked. I got a new job. I moved again to a different apartment, same neighborhood. I had another brief relationship, which also came to an end, and had another breakup. I would not recommend 2 breakups within 3 months of each other. Yeah, that was not ideal. I won't tell you so many details. It's funny to think because, like, I have so many dating stories and everything, but thinking back to those relationships, like, they're not really stories. Like, they were just good until nothing's perfect. And in this world isn't perfect. But they were good, and, like, there were funny things that happened, or good dates, bad dates, funny experiences. Maybe I'll get into them. I probably won't tell them now. I'll try to hide them in other stories, because I don't, the guys know who they are. Everyone knows who the guys are, so I don't want to, like, call them out like that. But both were very good. They just weren't the right guys for me. So now, the last couple months, I have been on a new journey to try to find the right one. And this isn't my first time dating. I'm not new to this dating game. I just kind of had a little break. I didn't date so much over COVID, although the people I did date or talk to, or whatever you want to call it, were pretty interesting, and I'll definitely tell you about those at some point. But then I had 2 back-to-back relationships, and now I'm back in the game. And oh boy, have I not missed the game. The game is not great, everybody. Not great. But I guess with every bad date, it just gives me content for this podcast, which is an incentive to actually go out on dates. Because sometimes I'm just like, do I really want to do my hair? Do I really want to put on makeup? Do I really want to pick out a cute outfit and just be on my best A game funny for, like, this guy who I don't want to talk to ever again? It's rough sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So, yeah, that's how I blew my life up in 1 year. But I think so far it's been pretty good. Aside from the heartbreaks, and yeah, but I'm in a much better place, I think. I have some friends now, which you'll hear from. And yeah, so now the last piece of the puzzle is what we're looking for. And I know everyone wants me to find true love, and I do too, but, like, the along the way part is what's giving me this content, so buckle up. So I figured I would ask my guests certain questions when they come on, so I thought for my intro, I would tell you guys my answers to the questions. So I'm going to ask all my guests what the worst date they've been on was. Mine are kind of tied. I think I have 2 worst dates ever. And, like, believe me, I've been on a lot of bad dates. So to be the worst date, I mean, nothing really crazy happened, but they were just, like, the worst time in my mind. I've gone out with a lot of weird people, a lot of weird stories that I will definitely get to at some point in time. But I narrowed it down to 2 to tell you in this episode. But I gotta keep you wanting more. So I would have to say, if I had to pinpoint my worst dates. So one of them is going to be my first J-Swipe date. First date from J-Swipe. I just finished my CPA exams. Or maybe I didn't even finish. Maybe it was, like, before my last exam. I don't know. It was the summer after I started working, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll download JSwipe. I need some like new options of guys. So I download JSwipe, match with a few guys, talking to a few. I go out with one. Or one of them asked me out, and I'm like, okay, sure. No background, no nothing. Didn't talk on the phone. Nothing. Fine. So I told him I told him I was at a client, Midtown, on the east side in the 50s. I'm like, come meet me by my client. We'll go make a plan. Like, can we go somewhere by there? I'll meet you outside my client. So we pick a meeting spot, and he's like, okay, we'll go for drinks. So I get to this guy. We meet up. He was okay. It was like very interesting. I still remember. I was looking adorable as always, but I was in my work clothes, dressed up, did my hair that day because the date, makeup, all that, picked a cute work outfit, and he shows up in a dirty t-shirt and jeans, and I'm like, okay, and like work boots, and like, I'm like, what are you wearing? Like, aren't you supposed to be trying to impress me? But I was like, okay, whatever. I just like didn't know what to think of it. So he's like, okay, where do you want to get drinks? I'm like, you're supposed to look up places. You don't, like, you didn't like Google where there was. I'm like, there's a bunch of bars like further east. So fine, we start walking. As we are almost at First Avenue, he's like, oh wait, I forgot my ID. We could not even go to drinks because this boy forgot his ID. What is this? I'm like, fine, whatever. At this point, like, also remember, it's July. At this, I forgot to say, it is July. I'm carrying my work backpack. I'm wearing flats. I'm not meant to be walking so much. I'm like, oh, great. He's going to pick somewhere close by. We're going to sit, talk, get to know each other like a first date is supposed to be. So we were passing by. He's like, okay, let's just go get Starbucks. So we go into Starbucks. We get drinks. There is nowhere to sit in Starbucks because that Starbucks is packed. So he's like, oh, let's take it. We'll go walk. I'm like, okay. And that's what we did. We walked. So mind you, we started in the 50s, I think around 3rd Avenue, maybe a little bit further west. Walked all the way to almost 1st Avenue. Then started walking back. Then we just keep walking and walking and walking. We passed Times Square. He's like, oh, do you want to go into the M&M store? And I'm like, sure. Let's go inside the M&M store. I just needed some air conditioning. So we walked through the M&M store. He's like, do you want anything? I'm like, no, I want to sit down. I like don't want to keep walking. So we walk through the M&M store and we walk all the way west to 12th Avenue. And then I'm like, can we like go somewhere? I'm like, oh, Columbus Circle. We're in the high 50s right now. Like, let's just go to Columbus Circle. So we go to Columbus Circle. We enter the park. And like, we had been walking for a while at this point. My feet hurt. I am sweating. It was hot outside. I am wearing a backpack. I am not wearing the shoes for walking. I'm not wearing the clothes for walking. And just so you know, I love walking. I walked home from work today. And that was like a little bit over an hour walk. I love walking. Oh, wait. That just reminded me, I never paused my walk, or I never stopped my walk on my Fitbit, so I should probably do that right now. So yeah, I love walking, but not in this type of situation. So finally we go into Central Park, and I'm like, wait, I see my train. I see my escape. So we're talking for a little bit, and then by this point, I am checked out. So I like talked to him for a few more minutes, and I'm like, okay, I really should be going now. My train's over that way. So he walks me to the train, and he's taking a train in the same stop, but like the other way or something. I don't know. It was not my train, but he was taking one of the trains there. So we get in the train. We get to, he like barely says bye, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, oh my God, this was so bad. So the whole way home, I'm like, oh my God, I just need to decompress. I just need to sit down. I'm so tired. I'm hot. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I just want to go home. So I get home. My roommate helps me draft a really nice message saying why I do not want to go out with this boy ever again. So then he messages me. He's like, that was fun. Do you want to do this again? And I'm like, no, sir. So I send the message that my roommate and I had so eloquently drafted. And he's like, I totally understand. No worries. Best of luck. You know how they say it. So Then I go to sleep, wake up the next morning. I have a message from him at 2 a.m. And the message was, so why didn't you want to go out again? And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with this boy? And I don't know. I'm still asking myself that question. What is wrong with these guys? Like, this is years later. I think this was 5-6 years ago. Like, what is wrong with men? Men, can you tell me? What is wrong with you? Why do you people do this? So, I never spoke to him ever again. I just kind of left the message opened or read. I don't even think I gave him my number. I think this was still on JSwipe. So whatever, the match expired. Maybe I closed the match. Who knows? Or I think he did after, like, I didn't answer for, like, a day. Fine. So that was a bad date. Let's just say I stopped JSwiping for a couple months after that. And I was like, I'm just going to focus on the CPA. I'm not going to do this again until after I finish. Which brings me to my second worst date. Let's fast forward a few years. This was in November 2019. So 2019 was an interesting year for me. There were a lot of things going on in my life personally. Just with my family and everything. I'm not going to get into it now. It's not really, like, related to this, but okay. And summer 2019, I met a guy. And he was great. And we were friends. And that was it. And I wanted more. He did not. So at the end of the day, did I break my own heart? Basically, yeah, I did. But it was okay. This is long forgotten. He might be listening to this. He probably knows who he is. Maybe he doesn't even realize. Even though I told him. And I'm like, I asked him his feelings and told him mine. And I think he might still be oblivious to it. But that's okay. We've all moved on in life. So this was... I was getting over that. And I was like, you know what? I just need to go out with someone else. And I'm just going to swipe on JSwipe and go out with whoever asked me out. And that's what I did. Also, you should know, at this point in my life, this was not too long after my 26th birthday. Because a week after my 26th birthday, I had an unfortunate incident with 2 Pyrex bowls that fell on my foot. And I injured my foot. I was walking around in a boot. And I was just a miserable person in this boot. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go to spin class. I could barely walk. I had to take a cane everywhere I went. It just, like, wasn't a fun time in my life. On top of being a little bit heartbroken. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I have to go to a client in Brooklyn. I didn't take my cane because I was like, I had a date. And I was just going to go straight from my client and meet this guy. He wanted to go for dinner. And I'm like, great. Free dinner. Love that for me. Which, usually I don't love going out to dinner on a first date. I just think it's too much. Because what if you hate the person and you're like, now I'm stuck sitting with them? Also, especially after this situation. So the guy seemed nice enough while we were talking. He was cute enough in his pictures. And you know what? I showed up and he did not look anything like his picture. And he was very, like, kind of socially off. And when I say kind of, I mean very much. And then I was stuck sitting in a restaurant for dinner in a boot in a cramped little table. And we sat for hours because the waitress would not bring our check. And it was slow. And I'm like, OMG, I just want to go home and put my foot up. I was also wearing a sweater dress and it was really hot in the restaurant. And I'm like, why? Why me? Why does this happen to me? Why can't I just be heartbroken? And why do I still have to go through these scenarios? Like, can't God just, like, give me a break once in a while? But no, I have heartbreak. And then I also have this terrible date on top of it where I'm physically uncomfortable. Not by him. He was fine. Like, he was nice enough. He was very off. Like, it was like, whatever. I'm like, ugh, I just want to go home. So I am sitting there and I'm like, I just want to put my foot up. And I am shooting the waitress looks. I'm like, please, like, pleading looks. And she finally comes over. She's like, is everything okay over here? And I'm like, lady, what if, like, I needed to be saved? And I was, like, trying to, like, motion for you to like call the cops. Like, that was not very like sneaky or stealth or whatever you want to call it. Like, you could have approached when he went to the bathroom. No, you have to come when he's there and I'm shooting looks, because he didn't see me shooting those looks. So finally I was like, actually, yeah, could we get the check? I asked for it. I made him pay, though. I always make a guy pay. First date, always the guy should pay. First, second, third date, sometimes I pretend to offer on like a second or third date, or maybe even a first, depending the vibe. But like, boys, if you go out with me, they're not real offers. Don't make me pay. If we're in a relationship, it's a little bit different. Like, that's when I'm like, okay, I can pay. Like, my ex-boyfriend, I actually one time stole the bill because he wouldn't let me pay for anything. So we went out to a restaurant that I chose, and we like spent a good amount of time like discussing why he wouldn't let me pay. Finally, I just took the bill, put my credit card in, handed it to the waiter, and then he was really mad at me. But it was fine. That was a very different situation. Normally, like, after it's established that we've gone out on a bunch of dates, like, I'm fine paying. Like, first date, I'm not going to pay. Second date, not going to pay. Third date, probably not going to pay. But that's because you're trying to impress me. Like, you should be wanting to pay. You also need to plan the date. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Guys need to plan the date. I hate when a guy's like, okay, so what do you want to do? Like, no, you asked me out. Planning a date isn't that hard, especially a first date. Take me to ice cream, a bar, or coffee. 3 options. Very easy options. Very not so like cost heavy. Like, if we go to a bar, I am going to get 1 drink. And if you order another drink, then maybe I'll get a second drink, but I will never just order a second drink. Ice cream, minimal expense. Coffee, minimal expense. So it's not that hard to plan a date, and I just think that guys need to learn how to do this, and that girls don't want to be asked what they want to do. I want a man with a plan. I want a guy who's going to make sure, well, I don't know if I want him to pick me up. It depends where we're going. But I'd prefer him to come to me, meaning like my area or the area of my choosing. And he needs to make sure I get home okay. Like, what is this? I think I just got spoiled with my last 2 relationships because both of them, well, the second one always picked me up also, which added a new level. But both of them would always take me home. Always bring me home, always drop me off. Granted, they both had cars. And I understand, like, sometimes in the city it's different. But you know what? If we're going to a bar near my apartment, walk me home. Put me in a cab. Usually I will not let you pay for the Uber. But, like, sometimes I might. I don't really want strangers to have my address sometimes. So, oh my God, that's also another funny story. I can't tell all these stories in this one episode. So you'll have to stay tuned because I have some stories about people Ubering me home. But I never even finished my worst date story. So finally I asked for the check. I leave. We part ways. He didn't even reach out again afterwards. So I think I didn't either. And I think it was just a mutual ghosting. But I went home. I put my foot up. I iced it. And I drank a whole bottle of wine. And I'm like, this was the worst. And I never want to do this ever again. So yeah, those were my 2 worst dates, I think. I have some other weird ones, but those were like the ones that I came home and I'm like, oh my God. I did have a date not so far, like long ago, like within the past year or so, where I came home and cried. Yeah, that was pretty bad. It wasn't a scary situation. I was just like, no, this is not good. But that's a story for a different time, different episode. So again, stay tuned. So you're probably like, this girl has so many bad things to say and she's so negative. So fine, I'm going to tell you about one of my best dates. Again, I'm not going to talk about my relationships. I did have some really good dates with them. I could tell you my best date with my ex-boyfriend, but actually, honestly, I planned it and it was like a day and he planned some of it. I really just wanted to go to the pumpkin patch. So we went to the pumpkin patch. Well, actually, he picked me up. I was staying at a friend's house. He picked me up, got me coffee, and took me to the pumpkin patch. And he took cute fall pictures with me, which is obviously what any basic girl like me wants. And yes, I am basic. Like, I'm one of a kind, but I'm also pretty basic. So he did a photo shoot with me, and then he drove me to see all the really big houses near where the Real Housewives live, and that was fun. And then we went home. We went back to his house, took a nap, which was needed because it was an exhausting day, and then we got dinner, and it was a great day. But like, I'll talk about my like best, most romantic date. So this is fresh off of rejection from the guy that I told you guys about, that did not reciprocate my feelings, but we were friends. And I was in London, and I was like, whoa, what a romantic city. And one of my good friends lives in London, and at the time, she had recently started dating her now husband. So she was like, we need to find you a London boy. And I'm like, okay. So I get there. She knew I was like fresh off of my rejection, like full heartbreak mode, all of that good stuff. So she's like, go down J-Swipe right now. Swipe, swipe, swipe until you find a date. And I'm like, fine. So I did. I understood the assignment. I matched with a bunch of guys, talked to them, got a date. So I meet up with, she took me to my date because I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. She took me to my date, and we met at a bar, and we had drinks. It was very nice. And then he's like, oh, do you want another drink? Do you want to go to another bar? Do you want to walk? And I'm like, let's walk. I know what you're going to say. This girl and the walking, I thought she just said she hated walking. Okay, you know what? It was a different scenario. This was in London. It was beautiful outside. And we were like in we were in a really pretty area in London. So we go outside and start walking. And we were walking along the Thames River. And it was gorgeous. It was like all lit up, like along the pier and the storefronts and the bars and restaurants, and it like beautiful lights, and it was like evening, so it was dark, like kind of dark. It wasn't like creepy, like, oh my god, he's gonna murder her. No, it wasn't like that at all. We were walking, talking, having a really nice time, and like it was great until he tried to kiss me, and then I gave him my cheek. But you know what? Not everything can be perfect. And then he took me back to my friend's house, made sure I got home okay, like a real gentleman should do, even after I rejected him. So yeah, but then I also never heard from him ever again, which was also totally fine because I thought that was understood. Like, yeah, it would have been lovely to fall in love with a London boy and just live there forever and be royal, but like, you know what, not all dreams come true. So, still trying to be royal in a different way, but that's also a different story. But not really a story, just like a life mission. Like, I think I'm meant to be royal, but also like I'll settle for being on the Real Housewives or other reality TV that's like Real Housewife level. So those are some of my dating stories. I hope that gave you a little bit to chew on. There will be more. I have a lot more. Like, don't worry. I used to have a blog. It is private, so don't even try to find it. I won't tell you the name. I had so many stories. One of my friends set me up with a blog so I could do this, and then some friends had access to it, whatever. I don't even know. It was public for like a minute, and then my friend texted me one day. She's like, you need to put your blog on private or else nobody's going to want to date you. So I hope that she's like, nobody's going to want to go out with you if they know that you're just going to write about them on your blog. So I hope that's not true with this podcast. Like, please, guys, don't let this podcast deter you from going out with me, because you know what? If it's good, I probably won't talk about you. I'll just talk about how happy I am and how good it is, or maybe you could be a guest on my podcast. Also, like, I thought that would be a good idea to have guys that I dated in the past on this podcast, but like, TBD. I was told by friends that probably wouldn't be a good idea, but you know what? We'll see what happens. The world is my oyster, so we'll see. So I think I'll end this episode by telling you some of my dating rules, because obviously I have a podcast about dating stories, so obviously I love giving dating advice like any other single girl out there. But I consider myself very wise. I listen to a lot of dating podcasts, and now you are listening to this one, so you listen to a dating podcast as well. So now you can also be an expert and instill my wisdom upon other people. So some of these rules are not my own. Most of them I picked up along the way. And if any of my friends are listening, I know that we discussed and I have some more rules, but these are like the prime rules. And the other ones are not polished yet, but like if they become polished and like really a part of it, then I'll add them to the rules and I'll let you guys know. But I honestly tell all of my friends these rules. They know them by heart. They make fun of it, but also they know I'm right, because they make fun of me saying it so much, but then they'll text me. They're like, oh my God, you're so right. Or they agree with me in the moment, but like still like to make fun of me because that's what friendship is. But okay, rule number 1. If he likes you, you'll know. If he doesn't, you'll be confused. Rule number 2. If he wants to, he will. And then my own personal rule number 3, only reciprocate. So yeah, guys are not that hard to read. And guys, if you're listening, like, I'm on to you. I know. So basically, if you're confused, it's a no. Which one of my friends told me is also one of my rules, but it's basically just a derivative of rule number 1. So just remember those rules in dating. And guys, you can apply it to girls sometimes. Girls are a little bit more complex, which is why I would never want to date a girl. Like, I'm all for it if people who do. I totally support it. But, like, I try to think about what's worse than dating guys, and I think it might be dating girls. Because guys are easy to read. Guys, like, like, if he doesn't like you, like, if he likes you. And I didn't really experience that until I experienced it. And I'm like, wow, this is what it's like to have a guy really like me. He is not playing games with me. He is telling me how he feels. He is showing me how he feels. And like, I'm not saying like crazy, like things early on. Like, no, it's like the little things and you can tell. And once you can tell, it's kind of easy to tell when they're not into it after that. So just remember that. And I'll get into those stories. So I'll close this with what I'm going to ask my guests as like I get to know you for the guests. So you guys don't really know me, but I love reality television. Reality television is my favorite thing to watch. Mostly The Bachelor and mostly Bravo. Those are my 2 outlets. And by Bravo, I mean everything on Bravo. So those of you who know The Real Housewives know that each beginning of each episode on each season, all of the cast has taglines. So I thought it would be fun to have everybody say their Real Housewives tagline. So here's mine. Reality TV is my true calling, but until I get there, I have this podcast. So I hope you enjoyed my first episode, and please come back for more. Please rate, review, subscribe. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Does anybody listen anywhere else? I don't really know. Follow this podcast on Instagram at Shticky Situations Pod. You can write in if you want. Remember to send me a DM if you want to come be a guest. If you're a cute Jewish boy who wants to date me, you could also send me a DM. I'm open to that too, maybe. But also like mostly guests, but you'll see. Maybe get to know me a little bit more before you slide in wanting to date me. Even though, like, I'm awesome. Anybody would be lucky to date me. That's the truth. So, thank you for tuning into my podcast. And I hope you enjoyed the tea. And I can't wait for you to come back for more.